Hello folks, my name is Taufik Al Amin. I am currently majoring in Petroleum Geoscience at the Institute Teknologi Bandung. Here I would like to present about how carbon capture utilization and storage or CCUS can be promoted in Indonesia. The outline of my presentation consists of introduction, methods, result and analysis, and close with the discussion. I will divide my introduction into several subtopics. The first is Indonesia is a big country. Second, regarding the energy growth, and then about the fossil fuels. Lastly, about the huge potential of CCUS in Indonesia. The figure on the right shows that geographically, Indonesia is located between the Pacific and Indian Oceans. It is the largest island nation with one of the most populous countries in the world. Recent years and future projections also show that CO2 emissions are skyrocketing without any technological limitations such as CCUS. The red graph is CO2 emission without the application of CCUS, while the blue graph is after the application of CCUS. Indonesia is also a coal country. We can see from the top right figure that coal production has increased exponentially over the last few years, and other fossil fuels also play an important role like oil and natural gas. This phenomenon result in significant CO2 emission if the limiting scenario is not implemented as shown in the lower left figure. The main CO2 emission come from land use change, and forestry, and energy are the second largest as shown by the pie chart. In short, Indonesia has great potential to capture and utilize CO2 because the first, many proven new gas fields have not yet been produced, many with high CO2 content, such as Natuna di Alpha, which is one of the largest gas reserves, but consists of more than 72% of CO2. Second, many oil and gas fields are in natural depletion phase, so CO2 is undeniably a huge potential. We can see from the upper right figure that if we apply the EOR activities, it can significantly increase the production in the future. The third, coal-fired power plants have an important role in the electricity mix. Integrating coal-fired power plants and CCUS will be critical to achieving net zero emission. Furthermore, my method for analyzing the potential of CCUS in Indonesia is to use a literature review. I use several sources such as published papers, course materials during the ITB Virtual Course, open access report, and several websites. Now, let's take a closer look at the result and analysis. I divide the crucial aspect of CCUS potential in Indonesia into three main categories, namely policy, geological nature, and then funding and international support. First, political will. Political will is one of the most important aspects. Indonesia's NDC commitment will reduce greenhouse gases emission by 26% by 2030 and up to 41% if there is international support. Since Indonesia currently relies on fossil fuels in its energy mix, this NDC commitment can be achieved by implementing CCUS in many sectors such as coal-fired power plants. The Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources also welcomes all parties to join in the development of CCUS to achieve net zero emission as stated in the NDC. From the politic, now we move to the geological aspect. Our geology also influences the development of CCUS. And luckily, of the many basins in Indonesia, the three big basins that are good for CCUS development are the Kutai, Tarakan, and South Sumatra Basin, which are known for their relatively stable geological structure and well-established infrastructure, making these three basins quite good in terms of future CCUS development. Utilization of carbon capture through CO2 EOR or EGR is promising due to the fact that many of our basins still have quite reasonable amount of remaining reserve and can be harvested through secondary or tertiary recovery via EOR or EGR. Here I bring two examples. The first is CO2 EOR in South Sumatra. The source of CO2 comes from West Java, so CO2 need to be piped to sinking areas in oil and gas field in South Sumatra to be used as EOR. The challenge is that it requires a fairly good and consistent demand for CO2 for the transmission economy to be profitable. It's also certainly need a maintenance for the pipeline because it's crossing the Sunda Strait. And then the second example, I bring the offshore Northwest Java case. Second, carbon can be stored below the surface in oil and gas field in the offshore of West Java. So CO2 comes from an onshore power plants in West Java needs to be transferred to an existing offshore facility before it is finally injected into the formation. An important consideration for CO2 storage in offshore areas is that any CO2 leaks will enter the ocean and not directly into the atmosphere. And then the crucial aspect, the third, is related to international funding and support. Here's the Gundi CCUS project is the first CCUS pilot project that will be streamed in the very near future. It is located in East Java. Simulations show that a reasonable amount of CO2 can be injected below the surface within 10 years and result in increased gas production. We can see from the left lower figure that we can have several increasing in the production after we implement the CO2 EOR. This CCUS pilot project was funded by many parties, such as starting with the SATREP projects funded by the Japan International Cooperation Agency or JICA, and Japan Science and Technology Agency or GST, and later with the support from the Asian Development Bank or ADB, and also the participation of Royal Norwegian Embassy and Kansas Technos from Japan also. In short, international funding and support is critical to the development of CCUS in developing countries such as Indonesia. I will conclude my presentation with a brief discussion of the uniqueness and momentum of CCUS in Indonesia. The uniqueness of CCUS implementation in Indonesia, of course, makes the environment around the energy facilities cleaner because a lot of greenhouse gases is sequestrated below the surface. The additional income due to increased production of hydrocarbons after CO2 EOR or EGR is quite promising and profitable, as shown by the simulation in the Gundi project. It can also benefit companies from selling carbon credits. All these three aspects can certainly show that the implementation of CCUS in Indonesia will be a bright future endeavor. Looking at the global timeline for achieving net zero emission, in relation to Indonesia's NDC and NZE targets, today is the very important momentum for the development of CCUS in Indonesia. Research accompanied by strong policy and funding support will facilitate this development. And then I thank you for your attention.